He's Ross Tucker, CBS Sports Westwood One, NFL college football analyst. He was on the call, Patriots, Cardinals yesterday. I was watching, Ross, just to let you know. Everybody else is watching Bills, Lions, Eagles, Steelers. I'm watching the Patriots and the Cardinals. He'll also be in the booth for Westwood One Thursday night, Broncos and the Chargers. Ross Tucker joining us on the program. Where do you want to start?
You tell me, man. There's a lot. I mean, I know you got Gary coming on later for Army Navy. We can talk about the Heisman. You know what? You know where I would like to start, Dan? I would like to start with the college football playoff and the transfer portal.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Okay. I live in central Pennsylvania. I live in the Harrisburg, Hershey area. And Penn State's backup quarterback, Bo Pribula, who plays like 20 snaps a game, because Penn State has this creative offensive coordinator, and Pribula is sort of like a Trace McSorley clone. He announced last night that he's going into the transfer portal and will not be with the team for the college football playoff. So now they're playing Saturday against SMU. It's the first playoff game in Penn State history. It's a home game. He grew up going to Penn State games. He's a huge Penn State fan. He loves Penn State. He's living his dream. Now, we have to assume that this probably means Drew Aller, the starter, is coming back next year, because I thought if Aller left, Pribula would start a couple years. But something is so wrong here, Dan, that you've got a kid that he's an important part of the team. However, if he stays with the team through the playoffs, he's not going to get a spot somewhere else. These other programs, they're not waiting for him, right? Like, if you're at any of these other programs, name it, Memphis or Central Michigan, I don't care, Ohio State, they need to know who their quarterback's going to be. And if Pribula can't say yes to them, they got to move on to the next kid. I just hate this. This would be like if NFL free agency was the second week of January. I hate this for Penn State. I hate this for the kid. Like, this is a major, major problem for college football.
This seems like an easy fix. Or the fact that they didn't think that this was possible. I said this last week. I was told by a source there are 2 players in the playoffs who are going to transfer during the playoffs. This is one of the players. There's going to be one more who's going to transfer, from what I'm told. And this is what's happening. These schools who are looking for these players now because the transfer portal is open, they are saying to them, or their representatives, we don't want you playing another game if we're going to bring you in and give you NIL. That's what's going on. And I understand both sides of this. Hey, I want to play. I'm not going to be a starting quarterback at Penn State. Yes, we're in the playoffs. They want me now. I either go now or they're going to move on to somebody else. We don't want you playing. We don't want you getting hurt. Like, if you're playing for Penn State, you might play 3 games coming up here. And that's what's amazing, is you're willing to quit on your team because somebody wants you, and they want you right now.
Well, and here's the thing. Like, he grew up like 20 minutes from where I am right now. This has to be eating away. This isn't like some kid from Florida that went to Penn State. Like, there's pictures of him that they show all the time, 5 years old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old, at Penn State games with Penn State gear on. Like, he's living his dream. But, you know, like all of us in life, you get to the point where it's like, okay, the dream got this far and it was great to play football for Penn State, but the other dream is to actually be a starting quarterback, maybe have a chance at the pros, whatever. Can you imagine? Let's just picture we're watching SMU Penn State on Saturday. Second college football playoff game ever in the expanded format. What happens if Drew Aller gets hurt on the second play, and Penn State has to put a true freshman into the game that's never played before other than garbage time? That is such a bad look. And the thing is, I know there's a window for after the playoff where guys can enter the portal, but that's these other coaches, their livelihood. We got group of 5 coaches getting fired after 2 years all over the place. The guy at Charlotte, Tom Herman, FAU, they're getting fired like this. They can't wait. Plus, the thing that people never even talk about, they are still supposed to be taking classes. Like, they are supposed to be registered for the second semester. Like, that's not even
now you're
a
getting
conversation
Ross.
anymore.
Now you're getting silly. You went to Princeton. That's different there. Your initial reaction, comments to Bill Belichick going to North Carolina. I'll give you an opportunity. Looking back on those comments, do you stand by what you said about Bill Belichick?
Yeah, I mean, well, now when I said it on the radio in Boston, I was laughing because knowing his personality and the way he treats people, and knowing what I think is the most important thing for college head coaches, that they're like polar opposites, right? So the key for college football coaches, head coaches, you're basically the CEO of a huge operation, and the two most important things you can do are to convince 17-year-olds and their parents that they should come play for you, and convince rich people that went to the school or are fans of the school to give you more money. That's the job, Dan. Like, that's the biggest part of the job. Belichick is definitely the best game planning schematic coach I was ever around. But you hear Brady's comments, Edelman's comments, you talk to anyone that's ever played, and I know people are going to reply in the comments, you only played 2 games for him, dude. Yeah, I know I only played 2 games. I was there for parts of 2 seasons. I know what he's like. I know his personality. It's 100% negative reinforcement. The first thing they do at 8 a.m. team meeting is show the 5 worst plays from the day before. No one I know or has spoken with him, Dan, can picture him being in a living room recruiting or talking to donors and trying to get money. Nobody can picture that. And maybe they can have success without that. Maybe he can hire some people that can do that part of it. I'll also say this, looking at the buyout, Dan, I firmly believe, and maybe I'll be wrong, and maybe we won't get a chance to see it. I firmly believe that as soon as he got an NFL opportunity or gets an NFL opportunity, I think he would leave the next day. I think he would leave the next day, even if I think the initial buyout's $10 million. If somebody decides in January that they want Belichick, I think he'd be gone. Certainly next year, if someone gets fired, I think he'd much, much rather be in the NFL.
Why is the buyout $1 million?
Because he wanted it that way.
But
North Carolina.
But the optics are terrible.
It's a great point. It's a great point. Guess what? He doesn't care about the optics, just like I don't really believe he cares that much. Like, it would be a bad look for him if the Jaguars offered him the job and in January he leaves UNC. I just don't think he cares that much. I think he'd say, listen, like, I'm sorry, but I have a better opportunity, or I want to take this. I don't think he would care that much about what that means for North Carolina. On some level, I feel like North Carolina, Dan, is getting already what they wanted out of this. Everybody's talking about them. They were able to reel in the big fish. They're getting relevancy. North Carolina is already getting a lot of publicity and a lot of branding out of this. I don't know. Obviously, they wouldn't be happy if he left. But, I mean, does anybody really think he'll be there for 3 to 5 years? I don't, unless no NFL team wants him. And maybe he'll stay because I'll give him credit for this. I never thought he would do this. He must really love coaching football. I personally thought he wanted to continue to coach in the NFL to break down Shula's record. The two huge positives about Bill: unbelievable schematically and game planning, and he clearly really, really loves it, because there's no other explanation for him to take this North Carolina job.
He's Ross Tucker, CBS Sports, Westwood One NFL college football analyst and host of Ross Tucker Football Podcast. The NFL MVP race is
just about over. Yeah.
It's over.
I mean, it's Josh Allen.
It's over.
The guy is unbelievable. Now, listen, there's 3 games left. That's a decent size of games. But what he's just done, especially against the Chiefs and the Lions, 2 games that everybody was watching, and even in a losing effort against the Rams, that was another game everybody watched, and he was ridiculous in it. You know, I don't like to get too prone to hyperbole, right? I can't, off the top of my head, think of a quarterback who I thought had a higher upside, meaning when they're playing their best, I'm not sure. Now, we know Josh has had turnover issues. He's been inconsistent at times in his career. But when he's at his best, like he is right now, who's better than him ever? He's 6'5", 245 pounds. He can run with power and speed, maybe better than any quarterback we've seen. He has the strongest arm in the NFL. He's very smart. You look around at their skill guys, they're putting up 40-some points. None of those guys are going to the Pro Bowl this year. I mean, maybe James Cook, but he's not throwing the ball to like a star receiver tandem like some of the other teams have. The guy is unbelievable. I think he's got the highest upside of any quarterback I've ever seen in my life. For when he's playing his best, I don't think anybody can top that.
How concerned should the Lions be?
Very. And listen, I'm from Pennsylvania. I do the Eagles preseason games. I have no ties or allegiance to the Lions. It makes me very, very sad. Very sad. This was supposed to be their year. Now Dan Campbell says it might be season enders for Aleem McNeil, their best defensive lineman, their last defensive lineman standing, and Carlton Davis, who's probably their best corner. I don't know. I've ever seen anything like this. They've lost, 7 starters on defense, and it's a darn shame, Dan. It really, I wanted them to see this through, and I wanted to see what they could accomplish this year. Now, they'll get some guys back. Anzalone will be back, so we'll see who they can get back for the playoffs, but it really, really stinks. We know that, this is why I laugh when people say injuries are no excuse. Really? Okay, so maybe injuries are no excuse, but they might be the reason. I mean, you watch the games, right? You see what the Lions defense was when they had Hutchinson and all their starters. Now you watch what it is when they've lost all these guys. At some point, if it's not an excuse, it's darn sure the reason why their defense stinks now.
I know that you were doing your game when the Eagles and the Steelers were playing, but
I watched it.
Oh, you did while you were doing your game?
Yeah, no, not while I was doing it. But after I got back to the hotel before the red eye, I watched it because I watch every Eagle snap because I talk about it so much during the week.
Okay. Anything jump out at you with that performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I do my power rankings on the Ross Tucker podcast on Tuesday. I'm going to have them number 1. I think they're pretty clearly the most talented roster in the NFL. I think they're the best team right now in the NFL. The thing I said on social media, this thing I do for Eagles fans, I hope they appreciate the offensive line. That is not normal what they're doing. Dan, their last drive was 10 and a half minutes.
Yeah.
10 and a half minutes. The Steelers had 2 possessions and 11 plays in the second half. Never heard of that in my life. They haven't given up more than 13 points. The defense, and there was a fumble return against the Jags. The defense has not given up more than 20 points since the bye. It's statistically the best defense since the bye, which was week 5. Their receivers are absurd. We saw that with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown yesterday. You know about Saquon. The only real question mark is Hurts. When he plays at that level like he did yesterday, good luck, right? Like, to beat them, you're going to have to force Hurts to beat you, and he's going to have a bad game. It's like, force the other team to shoot threes or whatever in hoops, and they have an off night and they're missing them. That's your only shot right now against the Eagles. Stop the run, force Hurts to make plays in the passing game, hope that he has a bad game and you win.
Safe travels. Thanks for joining us. Thank
you. Always, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Ross Tucker, host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. And he'll be on the call Thursday night. Broncos and the Chargers. That'll be Westwood 1. Take a break. When we come back, we'll give you our best and worst of the weekend.